strange, strong passion for the Russian Revolution and the Romanov family. I will not be talking about anything related to that tonight. I told myself when Aaron decided to throw this very thoughtful, very specific to me party that it would be expected that that's what I would have to do.
How many times have you seen Dr. Zhivago?
I've never seen it once.
Oh, okay.
I'm not good with movies. I'm not good with movies.
How many times have you seen Anastasia?
I've seen Anastasia many, many times. But I will not be saying anything about Russia tonight. I wanted to do something that was not that, and then I did absolutely no preparation. So tonight I will be talking about a woman named Dolours Price. She was born in Belfast at some point in history, maybe the 1940s, maybe 1950s. Like I said, I did absolutely no preparation for this. Dolours Price was born into a family of Catholic Irish Republicans. Her great aunt Bridie did something with a bomb a long time ago and had her eyes blown out of her face and her hands blown off. And that was kind of the history of the Price family. They were very involved in the IRA, but Dolours Price was different. She went to school to be a teacher. She believed in nonviolence. She protested on some famous protest thing in Derry. I don't know what it was, but it was supposed to be inspired by nonviolence. And then she saw many of her comrades be beaten within an inch of their lives as they were crossing some bridge that was possibly in Derry, but definitely somewhere in Northern Ireland. And so she decided, we've had a long history in Northern Ireland and in Ireland in general of trying to practice nonviolence and really failing and continuing to be oppressed by this colonial power. So, fuck that shit. I am gonna start making some car bombs and really try to get these British bastards out of my country. So that's what she did. She joined the IRA, and she quickly rose through the ranks, despite the fact that she was a very young woman, and it was very unusual that you would have IRA combatants that were women. Women have a long history of involvement in Irish republicanism, but not in that kind of combatant sense. So there's a lot that can be said about Dolours Price. What she's probably best known for is being behind the bombing of the Old Bailey in London. She was caught along with her sister Marion Price and several other of her comrades, and she was sentenced to life in prison in some British prison. She and her sister Marion went on a hunger strike that lasted about 2 years, most of which time she was I'm seeing my mother's reaction, you can't fucking live for 2 years without food. Well, they force-fed her. It became a major humanitarian issue. She went head-to-head really strongly with Margaret Thatcher. And what she and her sister were fighting for was to be transferred back to Armagh prison in Northern Ireland to serve out their sentence there on Irish ground. Eventually, the Queen concedes. She transfers them. She and her sister Marion are eventually released because by this time they've developed really debilitating eating disorders, and it becomes clear that if they continue to be in prison, they will die. So Dolours Price continues to be a prominent figure in the Irish Republican movement. In the 90s, led by Gerry Adams, there's the Northern Irish Peace Process, Consociation. They continue to be part of Great Britain. They also are part of Ireland, blah, 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 blah. Ends the decades of fighting. But many people, such as Dolours Price, were really unhappy with the result because they continued to be living under British rule. And I read Dolours Price's story a few years ago in a really good book called Say Nothing. And she's a really compelling figure because it's evident reading her story. One, as a woman, you feel some kind of irrational sense of kinship with somebody who manages to transcend this very patriarchal culture that would have been the IRA or any kind of militia group, and raises her way through the ranks, and you're yes, fuck yes, girl power, and then you're oh yeah, you disappeared a lot of fucking people and resulted in a lot of deaths. But you can also understand how somebody who's living under this incredibly tyrannical colonial system becomes radicalized, and how they would decide that what they're trying to fight for is more important than comfort or safety or even some people's lives. and that extreme measures have to be taken, and that anybody who calls for peaceful protest in the face of state violence is ultimately just trying to uphold that state violence. And so she's just this super complex, tragic figure. She died in her 60s as a result of, I think, a drug overdose. She had a really, really difficult life. She was really critical of the Northern Ireland Irish peace process, not because she was bloodthirsty or wanted to continue the violence, but because it really just kind of denied the experiences of the people who had spent their lives trying to fight against colonialism. And she's somebody who's really easy to sympathize with, and she's somebody who's really easy to say, wow, you're a monster because of the things that you did. And it's perhaps a lot easier for us to look at somebody like her, this person who entered this conflict at the age of 17 as this beautiful young woman who struggled with her mental health and who was from a European country but still was part of a marginalized group, than it is for us to have extend that same empathy to people who are in parts of the world that are maybe harder for us to empathize with all the time. But when I first read her story, that was the thought that I had, and I thought, wow, I probably wouldn't have had that knee-jerk reaction if I were reading about somebody who is a member of the Taliban or like another extremist group. But nevertheless, I thought it was a very valuable lesson. So I would really recommend Say Nothing to anybody who is interested in that. Yeah.
First, thank you for introducing us to her. And second, I love you and admire you.
I am very lovable and admirable, so I appreciate your kind words.
Wow.
And that's all I have for you. So.